How to admit that I've made a mistake. How to admit that I was wrong. Hello and welcome to Communication Psychology and HR. My name is Gerhard. I'm a psychologist from Hamburg, Germany, living here in the Republic of Moldova. I'm specialized in international, intercultural and multi-language contexts. This again was a question during a recent seminar. And well, it seems it should be easy to recognize our mistakes because especially today we appreciate authentic human beings and we have positive psychology, and probably you live in a country where admitting your own fault is a virtue. But if you look especially at the area of international politics, you will see that we have big players, big both in evil and also physically, they are quite immune against admitting their own faults. For example, if you pick the American president at this time, Donald Trump, and you may be in favor or against him, you will probably recognize that he has the trait of finding blame in others. So every time he is in a bad situation, he starts firing people and tries to shift the blame towards them or towards other nations or organizations. And if we are really sincere, if you don't like Donald Trump, well, think of the opposite parties or think of your own politicians in your country. When was the last time you remember the president of your country or the mayor of your city publicly admitting a major mistake or fault after leaving their job, publicly declaring, "I'm sorry for everything I did," or I made a terrible mistake. I was highly corrupt. I made a wrong decision to enter this or that war. Typically this does not happen. Now, in private life, there are cultural differences and there are also individual differences between family, social groups. And in some, it's a virtue admitting your fault. And now, I don't want to overgeneralize because there are different types of Germans and different types of social groups in Germany. But in general, I feel that back then it was more acceptable, it was even praised if I would recognize a mistake. In a different cultural context, which is the former Soviet Union, I often experience that if you admit to a mistake, then sometimes you will get hit even harder. I believe in England there's something like a saying, you don't hit a man when he's down. It's not good sports. So you want to have the opponent to be at the similar level. But in some countries, in some families and social groups, that's a tradition. So if somebody is on the floor, then you hit him even harder. And that's probably the rationale for this question. Now, what to do about that? First, often we have assumptions, but they may hold true or not. So even if in our childhood, in our family and at school, we experience such situations, this doesn't mean that we will experience them in the current situation at our job. And very often circumstances have changed, but we carry the same assumptions and we don't even test the assumptions. So it may very well be that if you try it to do this, people will react favorably. But because we are impacted by our history, we don't even try and we won't even find out. A typical example for that is the director of a company here, a foreign company. He had a construction process, and he gathered all the team for this project, distributed tasks and clarified questions, and at the end of the meeting everything was clear. They didn't have any questions. After 3 months there were serious delays, and well, he was upset because in construction delays are expensive. So he asked him, well, it's evident you didn't understand fully your task or your different processes. So why didn't you ask me at the beginning? You said everything was clear, or you had no questions. And the answer was, well, we didn't want to anger you, because in the cultural context here, if you don't understand something, it's the fault of the listener, it's your fault, and people are more hesitant to raise such questions because they don't want to expose themselves to such criticism. So in a typical teaching situation, people will leave the room having understood nothing, will leave the boardroom with unclarity, but they better not ask, not to be blamed as you were not attentive. Now, this was their assumption. Their assumption was that with this CEO from another country, it will be probably the same. They didn't even try. Had they tried, he would have reacted very favorably, because in that country he's from, it's the speaker's responsibility to be understood. So he probably would have excused himself, said, oh, I'm sorry, I haven't made it clear enough, let me frame it, or let me phrase it differently. So, but because they didn't test their assumptions, they went ahead and caused a much greater problem. So this may be very well your situation. We assume people will be mad at us if we admit to a mistake. Who knows? Now you may say, well, this CEO was from a different country, but we are from the same culture. But even within a culture, people differ. And this is once again a typical faulty thinking that most of us engage, especially if we interact in a global environment. We start becoming more sensitive to intercultural differences with other countries, but at the same time, sometimes those differences make us believe that within our group, our national group, we are more or less homogeneous. And very often the differences within our national groups are much bigger than between two nations in the mean, like on average. Good. This is one direction. So you could make small experiments and test in not high stakes situation. What happens if you start admitting mistakes at work and say, I was not right. And you see what happens. Then the other suggestion would be, well, even if people react like this, you can train yourself to not take it personally. So it's like some kind of endurance therapy, because I recommend in this direction there's rational emotional therapy, I believe, by Albert Ellis. And the idea is that we have a list of musts, interior musts. For example, everybody must agree with me, or must love me, must respect me, and so on. And reality is, as an adult, that this is not, it's not realistic, and it should not be like this. And so probably you have some inner must that hinders you, and if you start exposing yourself to criticism, well, then you become hardened or become more tolerant to that, especially if you're in an exposed situation. Like if you're a politician, you should be willing to accept lots of criticism, and at work too. So we need to have some kind of resilience against that. because it's natural. We also don't agree with other people. We also are angry with other people, and that's a normal situation, I believe. Please write me your comments on that. And the third suggestion would be, why don't you take the first step and see in which situation you can encourage people around you, like your children and your family or junior colleagues, to admit their mistake and react yourself as you would like them to react to your mistakes. So you initiate a culture of psychological safety, of error management, so that other people around you start feeling comfortable sharing their mistakes and admitting to their faulty thinking. And so you create that which you would like to have. And I'm sure that somehow there are different laws that could explain it. Some people believe in spirituality and in karma, and others in more earthly phenomenon. That you're creating an influence that at the end also benefits you. So I hope those were ideas that can bring you a notch farther. I wish you a successful week and see you in 7 days. All the best. Bye bye.